The wind carried the smell of wet earth as Clara Benson guided her old blue car along the lonely highway that ran through tall pine trees. The evening sky turned dark gray, and every few minutes a soft rumble warned that rain would soon fall. In the back seat, her daughter Leela hugged a worn stuffed rabbit and sang quietly to keep herself from feeling scared. They had been on the road for 3 hours, leaving behind the small apartment they could no longer afford. Clara told herself that the new town ahead would bring a better start, a better life for her and her child. Then the car made a hard cough, jolting forward with a metallic shake. The sound grew louder, and thick smoke began to rise from the hood. Clara's heart sank. She pressed the pedal lightly, but the vehicle slowed until it stopped by the roadside. Rain started to fall just as she turned the key again, gave one weak sputter, and then silence. Leela looked up at her mother. Her big brown eyes were full of worry. "Mommy, did it break again?" she asked in a small voice. Clara smiled, trying not to let fear show. "It is only tired. Let me see what I can do." She stepped out into the rain, pulling her thin jacket tighter around her. The road stretched on without a single light nearby. Cars passed in fast streams, sending thin sprays of water through the air. Clara opened the hood carefully and looked inside, but she had never been good with engines. Everything looked wet and smoking. She whispered a short prayer and checked her phone, which showed almost no signal. She stood there wondering what to do next, when a black car slowed down and stopped a few feet ahead. For a second her shoulders tensed, nervous to see who it might be. The driver's door opened and a tall man stepped out wearing a white shirt with rolled sleeves. The rain soaked his hair quickly as he walked over and smiled in a calm, polite way. "Looks like trouble," he said. His voice was deep and even, but carried a kindness that made her feel a little less afraid. "Yes, it just stopped," Clara replied. "I am sorry to stop in the middle of the road. Think it overheated." The man nodded, already moving closer to the car. "Let me take a look. I know a bit about engines." He leaned under the hood without hesitation, his hands steady even as drops fell on his sleeves. He checked a few cables, tapped the battery lightly, and asked Clara to turn the key once more. The car gave a reluctant growl. "That's good," he said, his mouth curving slightly. "Try again after a moment." As Clara turned the key again, the engine started weakly, then began to hum. She looked up, half laughing in surprise. "It works," she breathed. The man closed the hood firmly. "It should be fine for now, but get it checked soon." Clara thanked him again and again. "It really saved us," she said. "I do not know what I would have done here." He shook his head, brushing the water from his hair with one hand. "No need to thank me. Feel better about the road ahead. You are safe now." He spoke in a tone that carried quiet strength, not pride. Lila peeked out from the window and called out, "Thank you, mister." He turned and waved to her, his smile turning lighter. Something about the child's joy seemed to change his expression, as if a door had opened in his thoughts. Clara searched her purse and pulled out a $10 bill. "Please take this, at least for gas or for helping us, I insist." But he lifted a hand and shook his head gently. "Keep it, you will need it more than I do." For a short moment they just looked at each other as the rain fell between them. Clara noticed the depth in his eyes, not cold or distant as one might expect from a stranger driving such a fine car. "I wish I could repay you somehow," she said softly. "You already did," he responded, glancing back at Lila, who still waved from the seat. "That smile makes any long day worth it." He stepped toward his own car. "Take care out there. The town is about 15 minutes ahead." Then he climbed in and started his vehicle. The headlights cut through the mist, and soon his car disappeared into the gray curtain of rain. Clara stood for a moment longer, listening to the hum of her now running car. Something about that man's calmness stayed with her. It was not just that he helped fix the engine. He had done it with the ease of someone who carried peace inside himself. When she sat back behind the wheel, Lila asked, "Mommy, who was that nice man?" Clara smiled quietly. "Someone who stopped to help." In the mirror, she watched the road behind her fade into rain. She could not shake the feeling that they had met someone important, though she could not explain why. As they drove off once more, Leela hummed a tune beside her, the steady sound of the engine joining her sweet little voice. In that moment, Clara felt a small spark of hope return to her heart. A week passed since the evening on the highway. The rain had long stopped, and the sky turned bright again. Clara Benson woke early on the morning of her job interview. She had spent the last few coins from her purse to buy bus tickets to the city. Her hands were trembling as she dressed in the only neat clothes she owned, a light gray skirt and a plain white blouse. She looked at herself in the small mirror of the hostel room she had rented. The blouse was one size too big, but she smoothed it down and told herself to stay calm. Cider. Lila slept on a small bed with her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. Clara touched her daughter's hair and whispered, "Wish me luck, sweetheart." She left a paper note for the neighbor who had agreed to watch Leela for the morning. The bus ride to the large building downtown felt longer than it really was. She watched rows of shops, traffic lights, and office workers pass by. Every part of the city felt larger and faster than the small towns she knew. When Clara stepped through the glass doors of Coal Industries, her heart started to race. The tall white walls and shining floors made her feel small. She walked carefully to the front desk and told the receptionist her name. The receptionist smiled politely and gave her a visitor badge. "Please take the elevator to the top floor for your interview," the woman said. Clara thanked her and stepped into the elevator. The ride up felt silent except for the soft tune that played from the small speaker. She tried to breathe slowly. Her hands held the folder with her few papers tightly, though she doubted they looked impressive. When the doors opened, she saw a wide hallway where people walked quickly with purpose. A young assistant led her into a large boardroom. The windows there looked out over the city. A group of people in formal clothes sat around a table. Clara took a seat, trying not to draw attention. She did not notice the man who walked in a moment later until she heard the rustle of chairs as everyone stood. When she saw his face, her breath caught. It was the same man who had stopped on the highway, the one who fixed her car. His hair was neater now, his clothes a dark suit, his expression calm and serious. The young assistant beside her whispered, "That is Mr. Ethan Cole, our CEO." Clara's chest tightened. Looked down quickly, trying to hide her surprise, afraid he might not remember her. But when Ethan's eyes paused on her for a brief second, a flicker of recognition crossed his face before he continued with the meeting. The discussion about company plans and ideas lasted half an hour. Clara tried to focus on each question she was asked, speaking in a polite voice. Ethan listened carefully but said little. When she finished, he thanked her in a steady voice. His gaze stayed gentle but unreadable. After the meeting ended, the human resources manager asked her to wait outside for a few minutes. Clara walked to the lobby and sat on a bench near the window. Her heart still beat fast. She told herself it must be a coincidence. How could a man like him, a company head, remember a woman who had been stranded by the road? Yet when Ethan passed through the lobby a short while later, he stopped near her. He looked at her directly now. "Mrs. Benson," he said, his tone polite but kind, "I had not expected to see you here. I am glad the car did not give you more trouble." Clara stood at once. "I should thank you again," she said, nervous but sincere. "That night I was frightened. You came at the right time." He smiled a little. "I believe we meet people at the time we are meant to. Hope the interview went well. I tried my best," she said softly. "And that is enough," he answered, giving a nod before walking away. Clara watched him go, still unsure how to feel. When the manager returned and told her she had been accepted for the position, she almost cried with relief. She thanked the manager again and promised to start the following Monday. That evening, when she arrived back at the hostel and hugged Lila, she told her mommy found a job. Lila clapped her hands and smiled wide. On her first day at work, Clara discovered her desk was near a glass wall, where she could see the people from other departments moving about. The office looked clean and bright. She was careful to do everything correctly, filing papers, sorting emails, answering calls. Ethan passed by sometimes, speaking with senior staff. He always gave a short glance toward Clara when he did. Once, during lunch, he stopped near her desk to ask if she was adjusting well. Clara nodded quickly, still shy but grateful. Over the next days, Clara noticed he treated every employee with respect, yet there was a quiet sadness in his eyes at times, as if he lived behind an invisible wall. He worked calmly, without anger or rush, and people often whispered about how much pressure he carried. For her, the office started to feel like a steady place where she could breathe again. She did not expect kindness or friendship, only peace. But a small part of her heart, the same part that had stayed warm on the rainy night he rescued them, began to stir again. She told herself not to dream about things that could never happen. Yet sometimes when she passed him in the hallway and caught a light in his eyes, she felt something strange, like a quiet signal shared between two lives, that had once met by chance and now had somehow crossed paths again. Weeks passed quietly at Cole Industries. Clara soon learned the rhythm of each day. She came early, prepared reports, greeted everyone politely, and returned home in the evening to cook dinner for Lila. Life began to feel steadier. Though she worked hard, she often caught herself thinking about Ethan Cole. She tried to keep her thoughts practical, reminding herself he was her boss, a man far beyond her world. Still, the memory of the rainy night stayed clear in her mind. Lila liked to hear stories about Clara's new job. The little girl would ask, "Do you still see the nice man who helped fix our car?" Clara would smile and say sometimes, "He is very busy." Lila would giggle and say, "He sounds like a prince." That made Clara laugh and shake her head. One Friday afternoon, employees were asked to attend a company charity event. Families were welcome, so Clara decided to bring Lila along. It felt like a good chance for her daughter to see the big building she worked in. Lila wore a simple yellow dress and held her stuffed rabbit tight as they entered the bright lobby filled with people and music. While Clara greeted her coworkers, Lila wandered a few steps away, curious about the shiny decorations. Soon she spotted Ethan across the room, speaking with a group of guests. He looked different from how she remembered, dressed in a dark suit with polished shoes, but she recognized his kind smile at once. Without hesitation, she pointed toward him and called out clearly, "That's the man who fixed our vehicle, Mommy." The sound of her voice made several people turn. Conversation slowed, and a few faces looked toward Clara and the child. Clara's cheeks grew warm as she tried to hush her daughter, but Ethan was already walking their way. The crowd's reaction softened into smiles as he crouched in front of Lila. He said with a gentle grin, "So you remember me, little one?" Lila nodded proudly. "Yes, you helped our car when it was crying smoke." Ethan chuckled, passing kindly toward Clara. "That was quite an evening, wasn't it?" Clara pressed her lips together, embarrassed but touched by his calm tone. "I am sorry, Mr. Cole," she said quietly. "She speaks her mind." "There is nothing to be sorry for," he replied. "Honesty is rare and valuable." Lila handed him her stuffed rabbit. "You can hold Mr. Hoppy if you want," she said. He accepted it politely for a moment and then gave it back. The sight made Clara's heart flutter in a way she could not explain. Later that night, when most guests had gone, Ethan found Clara cleaning up the table she had used. He said simply, "Your daughter brightened the whole evening." Clara smiled, grateful for his kindness. They talked for a few minutes about life, the charity project, and the city's stormy weather lately. It was the longest conversation they had shared. Before leaving, he said softly, "It is good that our paths crossed again." After that event, a quiet understanding began between them. Ethan would pause by her desk sometimes, asking about a file or a client, yet his tone was always warm and personal. Clara listened carefully, trying to speak with calm respect. She began to see another side of him behind the strength of his position. He treated workers politely, but rarely showed much of himself. Sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, his face looked tired and far away. One afternoon, a heavy rain started just as the office closed. Most employees rushed out with umbrellas. Clara stayed behind, waiting for it to slow down. Ethan, noticing her at the front desk, asked, "Do you have a ride home?" "I take the bus," she said. "It's fine." "Lila's sitter will wait." He looked at the pouring rain and said, "I can drive you. It's no trouble." Clara hesitated. She did not want to seem ungrateful, yet she also feared office gossip. Still, the storm outside left her little choice. They walked together through the parking lot, the sound of rain loud around them. In the car, the quiet was comfortable. Ethan asked gently, "Does your daughter like school?" "She does," Clara said. "She has made friends and joined a small art club. She seems bright," he said. "She reminds me how open children's hearts can be." Clara turned her head to look at him, surprised by his thoughtful tone. "Do you have children?" He paused before answering. "No. I once thought I would, but life took a different turn." The sadness in his voice made her chest ache. She wanted to ask more, but stayed silent. When they reached her building, he turned to her with a faint smile. "Thank you for trusting me with the ride." "It is I who should thank you," she replied. For everything again. He nodded once before driving away, his taillights glowing red in the rain. Clara stood there for a while, the sound of water filling her ears. Her heart felt lighter and heavier at the same time. She had not expected the strange bond that seemed to grow between them, one formed from small acts and quiet words. She closed her umbrella and walked inside, holding the feeling close. Certain her life was slowly beginning to change in a way she could not yet define. Autumn came softly that year, and the trees around the city began to turn gold and red. Clara Benson had now worked at coal industries for 3 months. She had earned respect from her team and became known for her careful work and gentle manners. Leela was happy in her new school, and their small apartment felt more like home with each passing week. Yet something changed one quiet afternoon when Clara found an old envelope in the mail. The handwriting on it was familiar in a way that made her stomach tighten. It was from Martin, Lila's father. She had not heard from him in years. The letter said that he had returned to town and wanted to see his daughter. Clara held the paper for a long time, her hands shaking slightly. That evening she sat at the kitchen table while Lila drew with colored pencils. Clara smiled faintly at her child's cheerful humming, but her thoughts were heavy. The past she had worked so hard to leave behind now stood at her doorstep again. Martin had once promised love and care, but had given only betrayal and hardship. She did not want that darkness anywhere near her little girl's happy world. The next day, Clara tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept returning to the letter. She did not realize she had gone quiet until Ethan Cole stopped near her desk. His voice was calm and thoughtful as he asked, "You seem worried today. Is something wrong?" Clara forced a small smile and said, "It is nothing serious, just personal matters." Ethan did not push further, but his eyes watched her with quiet concern. Said sometimes sharing a burden can make it lighter. She wanted to tell him everything but held back. Instead, she nodded and returned to her papers. The situation changed quickly a few days later when Martin came to the company building. Clara was at her desk when she heard the receptionist's uneasy voice call her name. She turned and froze. Martin stood in the lobby, his clothes neat but his smile stiff. He said loudly, "Clara, I am here to talk about my daughter." A few coworkers looked over curiously. She felt her face burn with embarrassment. "Please keep your voice down," she whispered, trying to stay calm. "This is my workplace. I just want to talk," he said again. "You can't stop me from seeing her." Before she could answer, Ethan appeared from the hallway. He looked from Martin to Clara and spoke firmly, but politely. "Sir, you are disrupting business. If you have a private matter, it should not happen here." Martin glared slightly, but then muttered, "Fine, I'll leave." As he walked out, Clara's legs felt weak. She thanked Ethan quietly once the man left. That afternoon, rumors spread through the office. Clara heard bits of talk as she passed desks. Some people thought she had problems at home. Others guessed wrong stories. The whispering hurt her pride. By the next morning, she had made a decision. She would resign before things got worse. She typed a short letter and placed it in an envelope. When Ethan found the letter on his desk, he went straight to see her. His voice sounded calm, but carried something deeper. "You want to leave because of what happened yesterday?" Clara lowered her eyes. "It is better this way. I do not wish to bring trouble or gossip to your company." "Clara," he said, stepping closer, "you did nothing wrong. You have worked with honesty and strength. Do not punish yourself for someone else's noise." "It isn't just that," she admitted softly. "Every time the past returns, I feel ashamed. I wanted to build a peaceful life for Lila. I do not want to lose the respect we finally earned." Ethan watched her for a moment, then said slowly, "Respect is not lost because of gossip. It is lost only when someone gives up their truth, and yours is unbroken." His words struck through her worry like morning light through fog, yet she still shook her head. "I should go before it becomes harder." He did something unexpected. He stepped outside the doorway and waited for her to follow. Then he said, "Walk with me." They went down the hall to the balcony overlooking the city. The wind moved gently around them. Ethan looked at the skyline, his voice softer now. "You have given me more lessons than anyone here. When I saw you fixing every small problem, never raising your voice, never blaming anyone, I began to see what real strength is. It isn't in wealth or fame, it is in quiet courage." Clara felt her eyes sting. "Why are you telling me this?" "'Cause you should stay," he said. Not because I need an employee, but because you deserve to stop running from shadows. Let them talk. One day the same people will admire you for staying strong." She wanted to believe him, but her heart was full. "Thank you," she whispered. "But even if I leave, I will remember what you said." He looked as if he wanted to say more, yet he only nodded. "Then remember that you are not alone." When Clara went home that evening, the city lights reflected on the windows of the bus. Leela greeted her with a drawing of 3 people holding hands under a blue sky. "This is you and me and the kind man," she said proudly. Clara felt tears rise in her eyes. She hugged her daughter tight and whispered, "Maybe we all fix things in our own way." For the first time in many years, she felt the faint promise of peace waiting somewhere ahead, even if the road to reach it would still be long. Winter came quietly, and the air around the town felt cold and clean. Clara Benson no longer worked at Coal Industries. After that painful week when her past returned, she decided to follow her heart and start fresh. She began a small design business from her apartment. It started slow, but her careful work and honest manners soon brought her a few customers. She no longer feared each morning. Life moved at a peaceful rhythm again, like soft footsteps on new snow. Lila had grown a little taller. She loved drawing beside her mother and helping her choose colors for the projects. The small living room was often full of bright papers and laughter. Sometimes, when Clara made tea by the window, she caught herself thinking of Ethan Cole. She remembered his quiet voice telling her not to run from shadows. Those words had become her strength. She wondered how he was, and if the company still kept its steady shine under his hand. Ethan, meanwhile, had made changes in his own world too. After Clara left, he noticed how empty the office felt, though nothing seemed different. A quiet courage and sincerity had left a mark on him. He began to change many of the company's old methods and started projects that helped small local workers, not just large firms. He spent more time outside the boardroom, meeting people whose lives were far from his wealth. More than once, he thought about finding Clara, yet something kept him still. He wanted to respect her space, to wait until fate itself gave another chance. One mild evening near the end of winter, Clara and Lila moved to a small house outside the town. It was not grand, but it had a small garden behind it and a white fence around the yard. Lila loved playing there after school, while Clara worked at her desk by the window. Sometimes neighbors walked by and waved. The peace felt fragile but real, like a candle glowing against a dark window. That evening, Clara was preparing dinner when she heard the sound of a car stop outside. She looked through the curtain and saw a dark vehicle parked near the gate. For a second, her heart skipped. The shape was familiar before her mind even accepted it. Leela, who had been sitting on the floor coloring, looked up with excitement. "Mommy, that is the man who fixed our vehicle," she said, her voice full of pure joy. Without waiting for a reply, Lila rushed out the door. Clara followed quickly, her hands nervous, her voice soft as she called after her child. But there he was, standing by the car, smiling as the wind moved through his hair. He looked the same, yet different, calmer and lighter, as if he had left some of his burdens behind. Lila ran to him and said, "I told Mommy you were the good man. You came back." Ethan laughed gently and nodded. "I kept hoping I might see you both again." He looked toward Clara, who stood by the gate. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence held more meaning than any words could. Clara finally said, "I did not expect this. I was driving by and saw your name on the postbox." He answered truthfully. "I had to stop. It felt wrong to pass without saying hello." "Please come in," she said after a pause. Her voice was calm, though her heart beat fast. They sat in the small kitchen while Leela showed Ethan her drawings. The warmth from the stove filled the room. He listened to the child's chatter with genuine interest, smiling at every simple detail. Clara watched them, her heart filled with a mix of comfort and disbelief. Later, as Lila grew sleepy and went to her room, the two adults sat quietly by the window. Ethan said, "I left some parts of my old life behind. The company is smaller now, but truer. I wanted to build something that matters to people, not just numbers." Clara looked at him, her eyes soft. "I think you already started that when you stopped for a stranger on a rainy road." He smiled faintly. "You gave that moment meaning. You showed me a different kind of strength." The night air outside carried a cool breeze, and the sound of crickets blended with the hum of distant traffic. Ethan reached for the basket he had brought with him and opened it. Inside were sandwiches, fruit, and a small thermos of hot cocoa. "Thought we could share something simple," he said. They moved to the porch, sitting on the low steps under a blanket of quiet stars. Lila had fallen asleep inside, her drawings still scattered on the table. Clara poured cocoa into 2 cups and handed one to Ethan. They shared a small laugh as the steam drifted upward. For the first time since that rainy night, the world felt balanced. There was no rush, no fear, only the peace that comes when the right people find each other again. Ethan watched Clara set her cup down and said softly, "Maybe this time can stay and fix more than a vehicle." Clara did not answer at once. She looked at him, then at the small home behind her, then at the sky. The faint light from the house window shone across her face. Finally, she said, "We have already started fixing one another." The night deepened around them, gentle and still. The soul that once felt lost in storm and noise now found its rhythm again in quiet companionship. For Ethan, success no longer meant tall towers of glass. For Clara, safety no longer meant hiding from the past. The road that began with a broken engine had brought them both here, not by chance, but by something far kinder than chance. In that soft glow of evening peace, the 2 hearts finally rested where they were always meant to be.